Hello and good morning.
Hey, Ara, how are you?
Fantastic. How about you, dude?
I'm doing well. Nice to talk to you again.
Dude, when you said that you were writing a book about Fleetwood Mac, I was expecting to talk to you in a year or so. I mean, I didn't realize that it was ready to rock right now.
Well, no. I haven't written about one. I haven't written a book about him. I'm just talking about it. I just did kind of like a media, just a kind of a publicity thing to just draw attention to it. It's kind of an important date in their history, and two major things happened. So that's kind of what we're doing.
I love that because my last book, what I did was as I wrote the chapters, I went onto social media and I talked about it just so I could get people to kind of go, whoa, I got to read this book when it's finally done.
Yeah, for sure.
It's utilizing the tools that are sitting right here in front of us, Scott.
Absolutely. It's a lot of them.
Wow. So what is your connection to Fleetwood Mac?
Well, I've been a big fan for as long as I can remember. They've been around longer than I have. When I was doing my tour for the Mamas and the Papas book, I got a lot of people telling me that comparing it to Daisy Jones and the Six, which was loosely kind of based off of Fleetwood Mac's story. So, the Fleetwood Mac, the Mamas and the Papas were kind of the architect of the dysfunctional married group or with love interests in each other. And Fleetwood Mac kind of took it to a whole other level.
I've been with Ken Colley, and he told me what it was like to be in the studio with Fleetwood Mac when they were putting together Rumors.
Oh, I bet you he has some pretty interesting stories to tell.
Oh, I hope you reach out to him, dude, because, I mean, he is such a storyteller in the way of what it was like when things were not going so well.
Right, and that was a tough time for him. There was, I don't think they were even really talking to each other. There was just a lot of emotion, a lot of drama, a lot of hurt feelings. But, I think they were able to put all that energy into that album, and into the sessions and the songs that they wrote. And, man, they gave us one of the greatest of all time.
Yeah. Does it shock you that there are still people around that believe that Rumors was that overnight sensation, that who was this new band that was taking over? And yet, as a fan, oh, hell no. I've been a Fleetwood Mac fan all the way back to Peter Green.
Well, yeah, I remember when I was a kid going to like Woolworths and stores where they sold cassettes and seeing like, the best of British blues volume 7. And, you would see people on there like Graham Bond and Long John Baldry and John Mayall. And you would see Fleetwood Mac. And I remember being like, Fleetwood Mac, what are they doing on here? But they were, they started off as a blues band, 4 guys. And then they added Danny Kerwin a little while later. And they just, played straight up Chicago blues for a couple of years. And, then kind of moved into a more FM rock sound that garnered them a little more interest.
Oh, my God. You must have been looking at my notes because one of my questions is, do you think that FM radio...
Oh, for sure, yeah. It was the right time. It was, FM radio was kind of starting to move away from just album-oriented rock stations where they played entire sides of an album or the long version of Light My Fire or The End by the Doors, and to mimic more of the AM top 40 stations. And, Fleetwood Mac was also played there too back in the 70s. So, by the time the 80s came along and MTV and all that stuff, they were right in there, man. They moved into that arena swiftly.
Wow. I miss those days when they would play the full albums because, and I've got Alexa now, and all I do is I say, Alexa, play The Elder from Kiss. I want to start it from the beginning all the way to the end, or Frampton Comes Alive, because I want to experience full albums again in my life.
Yeah, they are. It's kind of a lost art form. You know what? And I don't know. I don't know what the current hit makers are like because I really don't listen to them. There are a lot of like a subgenre called retro soul, and there's a lot of new young artists there, and they really sound like a lot of the music from the 60s and the 70s, and like Mayer Hawthorne, and he puts out an album and it's great from start to finish, so there's good music out there, good albums. You just kind of have to look for it a little bit harder now.
How come we don't know the story of Jeremy Spencer?
He was kind of he was kind of a strange guy. He was one of the original members of Fleetwood Mac, a straight up blues guy. but he also liked like 1950s music, like rockabilly and Buddy Holly and stuff like that. So he put out a solo album in 1970 while he was still a member with the Fleetwood Mac, and it was kind of weird. It was kind of all over the place. And then I think after Peter Green left, he started to have a breakdown of his own. One of the many members of Fleetwood Mac to have a breakdown, and they were in Los Angeles getting ready to play the Whiskey A Go-Go in 1971, and he said, "I'm going out to get a magazine," and went to a bookstore and never came back. And they found him a couple of days later in a religious cult called the Children of God, where he stayed. And he put out an album with them. And then a couple of years after Buckingham Nicks joined Fleetwood Mac, he put out an album called Flea by the Jeremy Spencer Band, and he was a good imitator, and he really kind of imitated the sound of Fleetwood Mac with Stevie and Lindsey, and there's kind of an interesting album.
Wow. You're going to think I'm a freak, but as a kid in Billings, Montana, I promised myself to never see Fleetwood Mac in concert because I never wanted to lose that feeling of discovering them. And the thing is that just a couple of weeks ago, I watched my first concert thanks to streaming television, and I was blown away by it. I've robbed my childhood of something that was so special.
Yeah, that wasn't a good move, man. You should have done it. I saw them live, I guess back in 2014 when Christine McVie rejoined them, because I didn't want to see them without her. You know, they had been touring for a number of years, just the four of them, and she had retired. But she came out of retirement for a number of years there with them and toured, and it was great. I saw them in Philadelphia, and it was, to see Lindsey Buckingham just shred that guitar, and I'm So Afraid, it was incredible.
Oh. I'll tell you, one of the greatest albums that I have heard from any member of Fleetwood Mac was the last one from Lindsey, where he worked side by side with Christine. To this day, I can't get enough of her final moments.
Yeah, that's a great album. I got to see that. I got to see them live too. The Buckingham McVie tour. I got them to see them in New York City at the Beacon Theater, and they put on a really, really great show. And it was an interesting combination. But then they rejoined Fleetwood Mac, and then a couple of years later, Lindsey gets fired permanently. There's just a lot of strife in that group. Yeah, I think it emanates from Stevie Nicks and Lindsey Buckingham's relationship.
Yeah, but see, that's what I loved about watching them in concert, was the fact that you could see it when they would look at each other while singing the vocals and trying to harmonize. And it's like, oh, you guys are still fighting. God love you. God love you.
I know. It's crazy. Still carrying that torch to some level.
So what did Mick Fleetwood see in Lindsey and Stevie? Was it the songwriting, or was it, oh my God, here is this beautiful woman, I can market this?
Well, he went to, they were on the verge of breaking up in 1973 and 74. They had a really tough year in 73 with, they had a guy named Bob Weston who was on guitar, and he ended up having an affair with Mick Fleetwood's wife. And that broke them up. And then there was this whole fake Fleetwood Mac they sent out because the tour got canceled. That's a whole other story. But needless to say, after the dust settled, Bob Welch, who was the main guitarist, he didn't want to be part of it anymore. He was getting ready to leave. So Mick Fleetwood was looking for a place to record their next album in Los Angeles. And he went to this studio, and the engineer played him an example of a song that was recorded there. It was off the Buckingham Nicks album. It was called Frozen Love. And he was just blown away by Lindsey's playing. And I think Lindsey was either around the premises there or on the premises, and he introduced him to Mick, and Mick was just blown away by him, and he asked him to come join the band. And he said, "I'll only do it if Stevie, my girlfriend, can join." And he really wanted Lindsey, so he said yes. And that was a gamble that really paid off, because that investment came back to, 100-fold for him.
The top two lists of my favorite Fleetwood Mac songs, The Chain and Tusk. But yet when I say Tusk, people go, oh, come on. Why didn't people fall in love with that song? Or even that whole album? It may be the horns are just a little bit too much. I don't know. That's what I love. When it kicks in toward the end, holy crap, I live for that moment, even to this day.
My brother's a big fan of that song, and he always. I remember when we were kids, MTV would always play that video of them playing it with the USC marching band, and he would always get excited about that one. I'm more of a Gypsy. I love Tango in the Night. That's such a great album, and I can listen to that from start to finish at any time.
Wow. So when it comes to Fleetwood Mac, I mean, there's such a beautiful story there, and yet it's a reckless story, and yet you've got Stevie Nicks, who's in the Hall of Fame twice. There's a diamond in every rough piece of stone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there is, and she's one of those exclusive members that's in there for two, like Neil Young. I think he's in there for two. He's in there for three. And his solo stuff, Buffalo Springfield and Crosby, Stills and Nash and Young. And, so she's part of an exclusive club, but, it's funny because she doesn't have the strongest voice in the world, but it's very enticing and people love it. I love it. And she never really overextends it, and she hasn't really lost it either. It's still kind of there. Definitely not as as you get older, it's not going to be as strong as it was when you were younger. But the way her style, she can live up to it when she has to.
Led Zeppelin was known for their mystique. I think Fleetwood Mac has that as well, because at one point in time, all we had were album covers and pictures.
Yeah, for sure. I heard Stevie Nicks say that too, because when she I saw an interview with her one time where she was talking about when she joined the band. She didn't really know much about them. They weren't really big here in the United States, and their popularity in England had really waned. And so she went back to their back catalog and listened from start to finish up to the point, to the last album, Heroes Are Hard to Find, before they joined. And she said that same thing. There was just this overarching mysticism. It came from Peter Green and Bob Welch's guitar playing, and the some of the song lyrics and stuff like that. And she and Lindsey really kind of picked up the torch and kept that going.
I totally forgot that Bob Welch was part of that. I remember when I first found out that Bob was part of it, and it was because of Casey Kasem. Because Bob Welch had a song on his own. He goes, former Fleetwood Macer, Bob Welch. I'm going, what the hell are you talking about, Casey?
Yeah, there's a lot of mysteries to that group that you discover. In fact, his big hit, Sentimental Lady, was originally recorded on the Fleetwood Mac Bare Trees album. So the version we hear is a re-recording from 1977. That was his big hit version.
Wow. Don't you love the fact that Stevie Nicks has embraced Miley Cyrus? I mean, the interview that I heard with Miley was that Stevie talked to her about having an alto voice and how to work that alto voice. And now we've got, Flowers from Miley Cyrus. And I'm thinking Stevie Nicks had to have something to do with that, because you've become this giant legend in your own time.
Yeah, she's very talented, and I've heard a few songs of hers, that are really good. And I even saw her and Jimmy Fallon doing a takeoff of Dolly Parton and Kenny Rogers doing "Islands in the Stream," and they sang it really well. They both dressed the part too, and she nailed it, man. She's a great singer, and she does have a good voice.
So when you put this book together, are you going to reach out to the members of the band, or how are you going to do things?
I mean, if I ever get around to that one, I for sure will. But time is, we're running out of time. I'm getting to the point where the people I have to write about are passing away. Even when I wrote the Mamas and the Papas book, 3 of the 4 of them had died already, and I was a nobody from nowhere with no literary agent or publisher, and reaching out to Michelle Phillips, even though I tried, was an impossibility. But she put out a book on her own, about an autobiography in the 80s that told her side of the story, and that was a big help. So if I get around to doing that Fleetwood Mac one, I imagine I would have to do it the same way.
You and I are on the same page, because my wife and I were just having a conversation yesterday about Ozzy Osbourne as well as Rod Stewart. Both of them are not well, and I just keep going, please let me have one more conversation, please. Because I swear to God that Scott, that you and I are historians in the way of music.
Yeah, and look, they're still writing books about Beethoven and Bach and the Roman Empire and the Catholic Church and its history. So this is an era, and we have a lot more at our disposal. A lot of those people, they only have, if you want to write about the Civil War, you have to go out and study old manuscripts and scrolls and writings. We at least have books and mass media to help us out.
Would you say that Fleetwood Mac is a great representative of perseverance or incredible marketing?
I think I think it's both. Obviously, there's perseverance because there was many times, especially in those early years, where that group could have just folded. But, thankfully with Mick Fleetwood and John McVie, they didn't, and they kept on going because those are the only two that have been there from start to finish. Go figure. Fleetwood and Mac are the two stalwarts of that group. I think that's really lent itself to their endurance, and they picked up some really talented people along the way, and they always seem, even though they fight, they always seem to get back together again. But we lost Christine McVie last year, so there won't be a full reunion of the classic lineup ever again.
Okay, you just said something that all my years of Fleetwood Mac I've never heard before. You said Fleetwood and Mac. Are we talking John McVie being the Mac?
Yeah.
Are you kidding me? I had no idea, dude. Oh my God.
Yeah, that's that was, and it's funny because Peter Green named him that in hopes that John McVie would join them, because Peter and John McVie were both, and Mick Fleetwood were all in John Mayall's Blues Breakers, and Mick Fleetwood ended up getting fired, and Peter Green left to form his band, and he wanted John McVie to join him because he liked the way he and Mick sounded together. And so he named the group Fleetwood Mac in hopes that it would kind of cajole him. And it didn't at first. John McVie was happy where he was, but then John Mayall started bringing in horns and wanted to go kind of in a jazzy direction, and John was like, okay, I think I'll go join Peter and Mick, and the Mac finally did join Fleetwood Mac, and yep, it does stand for McVie.
And then they did Tusk. I can't imagine what he went through. Oh my God.
Yeah, right, really.
So what about us crazy old radio people that always got on there to talk on a song intro and said Eric Clapton was once a member of Fleetwood Mac? Is that true?
No, Eric Clapton was never a member of Fleetwood
Mac. I've lied to people so many times.
He was a member. He was a member of John Mayall's Blues Breakers, and Peter Green replaced him.
Okay.
So.
Yeah, because there's I think it's called the Green List that has all the bands that are related, and so we saw Eric Clapton on there associated with Fleetwood Mac. So now I understand that he was in a different part of the routing system.
Yeah. He helped lay the groundwork, because if he had not left, Peter Green would not have joined, and we would never have Fleetwood Mac.
All right, another moment that I would get on the air and I would talk about, and you're going to know more about this. I swear I read in Mick Fleetwood's book that he can't play the same drum beat twice. That he is he's difficult on himself. Is that true? Does he have a learning disability there?
Well, he's never been like fully trained. Like, he's not a trained drummer. He just kind of taught himself, and he has a weird, crazy style that just I think also in that book he also said that people would study him and they couldn't duplicate it because he's just kind of all over all over the place. It's kind of like Van Morrison. Like, Van Morrison never sings the same song the same way twice,
So I challenge you to create a podcast, and as you go through this journey, give us little niblets of what you're doing, what you experience, your oh wow moments, and things that we can have, so that when the book comes out, we're going to go, holy crap, it's finally here.
Yeah, there you go. I do want to do a podcast. I just got to build up my audience a little bit before I do that.
Wow. You promise me you're going to come back when this book is released?
Absolutely.
All right. Dude, you're always filled with so much love for music. I love that about you.
Yeah, I do. It's been with me all my life, man. I love it. It drives my wife crazy, I think, but because she thinks the music is the other woman.
Yeah, there you go. Well, please come back and you be brilliant today, okay?
Thanks, Arrow.